The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the weathered building marked Post Office, and Lily Porter pressed her gloved hand against her throat, knowing that no matter how desperately she wanted to call out for help, no sound would come. The summer heat of 1878 bore down on Porterville, California, with relentless intensity, and dust swirled around the wheels as she gathered her carpetbag and prepared to step down into a town that was supposed to welcome her as a bride, but would instead become the place of her greatest rejection. She had traveled all the way from Boston, answering an advertisement for a mail-order bride placed by a rancher named Thomas Whitmore. The arrangement had been made through letters, her carefully penned responses describing her abilities as a seamstress, her love of reading, and her quiet nature. What she had not disclosed was the fever that had stolen her voice 6 months prior, leaving her unable to speak above the faintest whisper that often failed entirely. The doctor had said it might return in time, or it might not. She had thought, perhaps foolishly, that a man seeking companionship through correspondence would understand that communication took many forms beyond speech. The driver helped her down, and she stood on the wooden sidewalk, her dark green traveling dress already dusty from the journey. Her auburn hair was pinned beneath a sensible bonnet, and her green eyes surveyed the main street of Porterville with a mixture of hope and trepidation. The town was larger than she had expected, with false-fronted buildings lining both sides of a wide thoroughfare. She could see a general store, a saloon, a hotel, and further down, what appeared to be a church steeple rising against the brilliant blue sky. "Miss Porter," a voice called out, and she turned to see a man approaching. He was tall, perhaps in his late 30s, with brown hair and a mustache that curled at the ends. He wore dusty work clothes and a wide-brimmed hat. "I am Henry Carpenter, foreman at the Whitmore Ranch. Mr. Whitmore sent me to fetch you." Lily nodded and attempted a greeting, but only a rasp of air emerged. She tried again, her hand moving to her throat in frustration. Henry's expression shifted from welcoming to confused. "Are you well, miss? Did something happen on the journey?" She shook her head quickly and reached into her bag, pulling out the small slate and chalk she had taken to carrying everywhere. With quick, neat strokes, she wrote, "I lost my voice to illness. It does not return. I am otherwise well." The foreman read the words, his face growing troubled. "Mr. Whitmore does not know about this." She shook her head, her heart sinking. She wrote again, "I hoped it would not matter. I can work. I can listen." Henry removed his hat and scratched his head, clearly uncomfortable. "Miss, I think there may be a problem. Mr. Whitmore is particular about things. He expects what was promised in the letters." Before Lily could respond, another man emerged from the hotel across the street. This man was younger, perhaps 25, with sandy hair and sharp features. He walked with the confident stride of someone who owned what he surveyed, and as he approached, Lily felt her stomach tighten with apprehension. "So this is the bride from Boston," Thomas Whitmore said, looking her up and down as if she were livestock at auction. His voice carried an edge of disappointment. "She looks healthy enough, I suppose." Lily attempted a curtsy, then wrote on her slate, "Mr. Whitmore, I am pleased to meet you." He barely glanced at the slate. "Put that away. We can talk properly at the ranch. Henry, help her with her trunk and we will head out. I want to be back before dark." "Sir," Henry said carefully, "there is something you should know." "It can wait until we are home," Thomas said dismissively, already turning toward a wagon hitched nearby. The ride to the ranch took nearly an hour, during which Thomas spoke intermittently about his property, his expectations for a wife, and his position in the community. Lily sat in the back of the wagon, her slate forgotten on her lap, listening to him describe a life she was supposed to fit into like a puzzle piece cut by someone else's hand. Henry drove in silence, occasionally glancing back at her with what appeared to be sympathy. The Whitmore ranch, when they arrived, was substantial. A large house stood at the center, painted white with green shutters, surrounded by various outbuildings, corrals, and fenced pastures where cattle grazed. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still touched with snow despite the summer heat. Under different circumstances, Lily would have found it beautiful. Thomas helped her down from the wagon himself this time, and as they stood in the yard, he finally seemed to take a proper look at her. "Now then, let us go inside and discuss the arrangements. The preacher can come tomorrow, and we will have a simple ceremony. I have hired a woman from town to cook and clean, but you will take over those duties after the wedding." Lily nodded, then held up her slate upon which she had written during the ride. "I must tell you something important," he frowned. "What is it? Speak plainly." She pointed to her throat and shook her head, then wrote, "I cannot speak. Illness took my voice. I am sorry I did not tell you in letters." "I was afraid you would not want me." Thomas stared at the words, his expression hardening with each passing second. "You cannot speak. At all." She tried to produce sound, straining until tears formed in her eyes, but only the barest whisper emerged, unintelligible and weak. She shook her head, defeated. "This is unacceptable," Thomas said, his voice rising. "I ordered a wife, not a mute woman who cannot fulfill basic duties. How are you supposed to call the children when they misbehave? How will you converse with neighbors or conduct business in town? What possible use are you to me?" The words struck like physical blows. Lily stepped back, her slate clutched against her chest. Henry had been unhitching the horses, but he turned now, concern evident on his weathered face. "Mr. Whitmore, perhaps you should take some time to consider. The lady has come a long way." "I have considered enough," Thomas snapped. "This is breach of contract, pure and simple. She misrepresented herself deliberately. I will not be saddled with damaged goods." He turned his cold gaze back to Lily. "You will stay the night in the bunkhouse, and tomorrow Henry will take you back to town. From there, you can make your own arrangements. I will not pay for your return passage to Boston." Lily felt her world crumbling. She had sold everything she owned to make the journey west. She had no family left in Boston, no position to return to. This marriage was supposed to be her fresh start, her hope for a future. Now she was being cast aside like refuse before the wedding had even taken place. She wrote frantically, "Please, I can learn to make do. I will work hard. I ask only for a chance." Thomas did not even look at her slate. "Henry, see to it. I have wasted enough time on this matter." With that, he strode toward the house, leaving Lily standing in the dusty yard with tears streaming down her face. Henry approached her slowly, his expression pained. "I am sorry, miss. Truly I am. Thomas is not always the easiest man, but I never thought he would be this harsh. Come, I will show you where you can sleep tonight and get you some supper." She followed him numbly to a small building that served as quarters for ranch hands. It was empty at this hour, the men still out working. Henry showed her to a corner with a cot and left her carpetbag beside it. "There is a pump outside for water, and the privy is behind that grove of trees. I will bring you something to eat shortly." When he left, Lily collapsed onto the cot and allowed herself to weep silently, her shoulders shaking with the force of emotions she could not voice. She had been foolish to hope, foolish to think that her condition would not matter. In this harsh land, usefulness was currency, and she had just been declared worthless. She must have dozed off, exhausted from travel and heartbreak, because she woke to the sound of male voices outside. The light through the small window had turned golden with approaching evening. She sat up, smoothing her dress and wiping at her face, aware that her eyes must be red and swollen. The door opened, and several men filed in, stopping short when they saw her. There were 5 of them, all dressed in work clothes, all staring at her in surprise. "Well, I will be," one of them said, an older man with silver threading his dark beard. "Henry did not say we would have company tonight." "She is the mail-order bride that Thomas rejected," another voice said from the doorway. Henry entered behind the ranch hands, carrying a covered plate. "Miss Porter, these are the men who work the ranch. That is Samuel, and Jose and Billy, and the one talking first is Garrett. The young one there is Pete. Gentlemen, the lady will be sleeping here tonight, and I expect every one of you to be on your best behavior. Any man who causes her a moment of trouble will answer to me." The men nodded, suddenly bashful. Samuel, the older man, removed his hat. "Welcome, miss. Sorry to hear about your troubles." Lily managed a small smile and nodded her thanks. Henry brought her the plate, which contained beans, cornbread, and some kind of meat. "Eat up. You must be hungry after that journey." She wrote on her slate, "Thank you for your kindness." "Why is she writing?" Pete asked, a young man who could not have been more than 19. "She cannot speak," Henry explained. "Lost her voice to illness. That is why Thomas rejected her." "That is a damn shame," Garrett said, then colored. "Pardon my language, miss." Jose, a man with dark hair and kind eyes, shook his head. "The boss, he is a fool. A voice is just noise. It is the heart that matters." The words, simple as they were, touched Lily deeply. She wrote, "You are very kind to say so." The evening passed with surprising comfort. The men went about their business, washing up for supper, talking amongst themselves about the day's work. They included Lily in their conversation. Asking questions she could answer with nods or shakes of her head, reading aloud her slate when she had something to share. It was more kindness than Thomas Whitmore had shown her in the brief time she had known him. That night, as she lay on the narrow cot with the sounds of sleeping men around her, properly separated by hung blankets that the men had rigged for her privacy, Lily contemplated her future. She had perhaps enough money for a week at the hotel in town, if she was frugal. After that, she would need to find work, though what kind of work a voiceless woman could do in a rough frontier town, she did not know. Morning came too quickly. Lily woke before dawn, washed at the pump outside, and repacked her meager belongings. Henry found her sitting on the porch of the bunkhouse, watching the sunrise paint the mountains in shades of rose and gold. "Ready?" he asked gently. She nodded, though ready was not the word she would have chosen. Resigned, perhaps. Defeated, certainly. The ride back to Porterville was even more silent than the ride out had been. Henry seemed to be struggling with something, opening his mouth several times as if to speak, then closing it again. Finally, as they approached the outskirts of town, he spoke. "Miss Porter, I know this is not my place, but I feel I should mention something. There is another ranch about 10 miles north of town, the Triple Bar T. The owner is Thomas Wade, though most folks call him Wade to avoid confusion with our Thomas. He is always looking for help, and he is a fair man. Fairer than Whitmore, that is certain. Maybe you could inquire there about work." Lily pulled out her slate. "What kind of help does he need?" "All kinds. He lost his cook a month back when she married one of his hands and they moved east. He has been making do, but I heard him complaining in town last week about burned beans and bread hard as rocks. Could be he would appreciate someone with domestic skills, voice or no voice." It was a thread of hope, thin but real. Lily wrote, "Will you tell me how to find this place?" Henry gave her directions, and when they reached town, instead of taking her to the hotel, he drove her to the general store. "You will need supplies if you are going out to the Triple Bar T. Let me help you outfit yourself properly." She wanted to protest, to preserve what little money she had, but Henry was insistent. He helped her purchase a canteen, a better hat for riding in the sun, some provisions that would not spoil, and even arranged for her to borrow a horse. You can return it when you come back to town, or send it back with someone if things work out at the ranch. Why are you helping me? Lily wrote, her eyes questioning. Henry smiled sadly. I have a daughter back east about your age. I hope if she ever found herself in trouble, someone would show her kindness. Besides, what Thomas did was not right. You deserved better than that. With directions memorized and supplies secured, Lily set out for the Triple Bar Tea Ranch. The ride was longer than she expected, the summer heat intense even in the morning hours. She passed fields where cattle grazed, crossed a creek bed that was more dust than water, and finally, after nearly 2 hours of riding, spotted buildings in the distance. The Triple Bar Tea was different from the Whitmore Ranch. Where Thomas's property had been neat and orderly, this place had a more lived-in, working appearance. The house was smaller, built of rough-hewn logs rather than painted boards, and the corrals showed signs of recent repair. Several horses stood in the shade of a barn, and she could hear the sound of hammering from somewhere behind the main house. Lily dismounted, her legs unsteady after the ride, and tied the horse to a rail. She walked toward the house, her heart pounding, rehearsing in her mind how she would explain her presence through writing. But before she reached the porch, a man emerged from the barn, and the sight of him made her stop in her tracks. He was tall, perhaps 30 years old, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of whiskey in sunlight. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing strong forearms marked with scars that spoke of hard work and perhaps harder times. He moved with a confident grace, and when he saw her, he stopped as well, surprise clear on his face. "Can I help you?" he called out, his voice deep and warm despite the question. Lily reached for her slate, but it had shifted in her bag during the ride. As she fumbled for it, the man approached, his boots raising small puffs of dust with each step. "You look like you have been riding hard," he observed. "Are you lost? Do you need water?" She finally extracted the slate and wrote quickly, "I am looking for Thomas Wade. I seek employment." He read the words, his expression shifting from concern to interest. "I am Thomas Wade, but most call me Wade. What kind of employment are you seeking, miss?" Lily wrote. "I heard you need a cook. I can cook and clean. I am a hard worker." "That is true enough. I do need a cook," Wade said, pushing his hat back slightly. "But why are you writing instead of speaking? Are you shy?" She had been through this before, less than 24 hours ago, and the memory of Thomas Whitmore's rejection was still raw. But something in Wade's eyes made her think he might be different. She wrote, "I lost my voice to illness. It does not return. I cannot speak." Wade read the words carefully, then looked at her face, really looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. "That must be difficult," he said simply. "But it does not affect your ability to cook, does it?" She shook her head, hope blooming cautiously in her chest. "Can you make bread that does not break teeth? Beans that do not taste like charcoal? Coffee that a man can actually drink?" Lily nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips despite herself. "Then as far as I am concerned, you are qualified," Wade said. "The job is yours if you want it. Room and board plus $30 a month. The work is hard and the hours are long, but I treat my people fair, and I do not abide by cruelty or dishonesty. Those are my terms." It was more than she had hoped for, more than she had dared to dream after yesterday's humiliation. She wrote, "I accept your terms, thank you. No thanks needed. You will be saving my life. My hands are about ready to mutiny over the food situation." Wade smiled, and the expression transformed his serious face into something almost boyish. "Come on, I will show you the house and the kitchen. Fair warning, I left it in a sorry state this morning. I burned the porridge." He led her toward the house, carrying her carpet bag despite her protests conveyed through gestures. The interior was rustic but clean, with simple furniture and bare walls. The kitchen was indeed a disaster, with a pot still sitting on the stove containing what might have once been oatmeal but now resembled something you would use to seal cracks in wood. "I will clean this up first," Lily wrote, surveying the damage. "I can help," Wade offered. "It is my mess, after all." She shook her head and made a shooing motion. He laughed, a deep, genuine sound that filled the small kitchen. "All right, I can take a hint. I will get back to fixing that fence. There is a room off the kitchen that is yours. It is small, but it has a window and a decent bed. Make yourself at home." When he left, Lily stood in the center of the kitchen for a long moment, scarcely believing her fortune. She had a job, a place to stay, and an employer who had not flinched at her condition. The relief was so intense it made her dizzy. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. First, she tackled the burned pot, scrubbing until her arms ached. Then she explored the pantry, finding it reasonably well stocked with staples: flour, cornmeal, dried beans, salt pork, coffee, and various canned goods. There was a root cellar with potatoes, onions, and carrots showing signs of age but still usable. She could work with this. By noon, she had the kitchen clean and had prepared a simple meal of fried potatoes, bacon, and fresh biscuits. The biscuits were light and fluffy, the way her mother had taught her to make them back in Boston, what felt like a lifetime ago. She went to the door and rang the bell she found there, hoping it would signal mealtime. Wade appeared within minutes, followed by 3 ranch hands she had not yet met. They trooped into the kitchen, bringing the smell of honest sweat and sunshine with them, and stopped short when they saw the table laid with food. "Is that fresh biscuits I smell?" one of them asked, a lean man with a scar across his cheek. "This is Miss Porter," Wade said, making introductions. "She is our new cook. Miss Porter, this is Jack, Robert, and young Timothy. Gentlemen, the lady cannot speak, so she writes to communicate. Treat her with respect, or you will answer to me." The men nodded, suddenly formal, and took their seats. Lily served the food, her hands steady despite her nervousness. This was her first test, her first chance to prove her worth. The first bite brought silence to the table. Then Robert, a man with graying hair and kind eyes, looked up at her with something like reverence. "Miss, this is the best thing I have eaten in months." "Years," Jack corrected, reaching for a third biscuit. "Wade, where did you find this angel?" Wade glanced at Lily, who felt her cheeks warm under the praise. "She found me, actually. Rode out this morning looking for work." "Well, you better pay her double whatever you are offering," Timothy said, the youngest of the group at perhaps 21. "Because if you do not, I will quit and go work for whoever will hire her next." The men laughed, and the meal continued with easy conversation. Lily moved around the kitchen, refilling coffee cups and bringing more biscuits, feeling useful in a way she had not felt since her illness. These men did not care that she could not speak. They cared that she could cook, that she could contribute, that she was willing to work. After the meal, as the hands returned to their duties, Wade lingered. "Miss Porter, that was excellent, truly. But I have to ask, you are clearly educated, clearly from somewhere far from here. What brought you all the way to Porterville?" Lily had known this question would come. She pulled out her slate and began to write, the chalk making soft, scratching sounds in the quiet kitchen. When she finished, she turned it so he could read. "I came as a mail-order bride. The man who sent for me rejected me when he learned of my condition. I had nowhere else to go." Wade's jaw tightened as he read. "Who was the man?" She hesitated, then wrote, "Thomas Whitmore." "Of course it was," Wade muttered, anger flashing in his eyes. "That pompous fool. He rejected you because you cannot speak," Lily nodded, looking down at her hands. Then he is an even bigger idiot than I thought, Wade said firmly. His loss is my gain, Miss Porter. You are welcome here for as long as you want to stay. She looked up at him, surprised by the vehemence in his voice, and found him watching her with an expression she could not quite read. After a moment, he cleared his throat and turned away. I should get back to work. Thank you again for the meal. That evening, Lily prepared a supper of beef stew and cornbread that disappeared so quickly she worried she had not made enough. The men praised her lavishly, and even Wade, who was more reserved, nodded his approval. As she cleaned up after the meal, she reflected on the strange turn her life had taken. 24 hours ago, she had been desolate, rejected, certain her future held nothing but hardship. Now she was employed, respected, and for the first time since her illness, she felt a flicker of something like happiness. The days settled into a routine. Lily rose before dawn to start breakfast, prepared hearty midday meals, and cooked suppers that left the men satisfied. In between, she cleaned the house, did laundry, tended a small vegetable garden she found behind the kitchen, and tried to bring some order to the bachelor household. She discovered that Wade was a man of simple tastes but deep complexity. He read books in the evening, poetry mostly, and sometimes she would catch him staring out at the mountains with an expression of profound loneliness. The ranch hands were good men, hardworking and decent. Jack had fought in the war and rarely spoke of it. Robert was a widower with children back east he supported with his wages. Timothy was the son of a failed farmer, trying to make his own way. They all treated Lily with unfailing courtesy, and she grew comfortable in their presence. But it was Wade who occupied her thoughts more and more as the weeks passed. She found herself watching him when she thought he would not notice, admiring the way he moved, the patience he showed with the horses, the fairness with which he treated his men. He never raised his voice in anger, never acted without thinking, and never made her feel less than whole because of her silence. One evening, about a month after her arrival, Wade came into the kitchen after the other men had left for the bunkhouse. Lily was finishing the dishes, her hands moving automatically through the familiar task. "Miss Porter," he said, and something in his tone made her turn. "I wanted to thank you again. This place feels like a home now, not just a place where I sleep between work. That is because of you." Lily dried her hands and reached for her slate. "You gave me a chance when no one else would. I am grateful." Wade stepped closer, and in the lamplight she could see the lines around his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his jaw. "May I ask you something personal?" She nodded, her heart beginning to beat faster. "You miss it? Your voice, I mean. Does it hurt not being able to speak?" No one had asked her that before. Most people avoided the topic, uncomfortable with her affliction. She thought about how to answer, then wrote slowly, "At first, yes. It felt like losing a part of myself. But now I think perhaps I hear more than I did before. When you cannot speak, you learn to listen in different ways." Wade read the words carefully. "Listen in different ways," he repeated softly. "I like that." He was quiet for a moment, then continued, "I lost someone once, my wife. She died 3 years ago in childbirth. The baby did not survive either." Lily's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with sympathy. She wrote, "I am so sorry." "I thought I would never feel anything again," Wade said, his voice rough with old pain. "I worked myself near to death that first year trying to outrun the grief. It did not work, but eventually I learned to live with it, to hear the world again in a different way. So I think I understand a little what you mean." She wrote, "Thank you for telling me. It must have been very hard to lose them." "It was the hardest thing I have ever endured," Wade admitted. "But lately, I have been thinking that maybe it is time to stop just enduring and start living again." "Does that make sense?" Lily nodded, understanding completely. She wrote, It makes perfect sense. We cannot change the past, but we can choose the future. Wade smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. You are a wise woman, Miss Porter. And I find I value your thoughts, even written, more than I have valued anyone's spoken words in a very long time. The moment stretched between them, charged with something Lily was afraid to name. Then Wade stepped back, breaking the spell. I should let you finish up. Good night, Miss Porter. Good night, she mouthed, though no sound emerged, and watched him leave. That night, lying in her small room, Lily acknowledged the truth she had been avoiding. She was falling in love with Thomas Wade. It was foolish, perhaps dangerous. She was an employee, a woman with a disability, someone who had already been rejected once. But her heart, traitorous thing that it was, did not care about logic. It only cared that when Wade looked at her, she felt seen in a way she never had before. The next morning, a rider came from town with news that there was to be a barn dance the following Saturday at the church social hall. The whole county was invited. Wade's ranch hands were excited, already talking about which girls from town they hoped would attend. Lily listened to their chatter with a mixture of longing and resignation. She could not dance, could not make small talk, could not do any of the things women did at such events. Miss Porter, you will come with us, will you not? Timothy asked as she served breakfast. She shook her head and wrote, I do not think I would enjoy such an event. Nonsense, Robert said. You have been working too hard. You deserve an evening of fun. Wade had been quiet, eating his meal, but now he spoke. Miss Porter should decide for herself whether she wants to attend. It is her choice. She glanced at him gratefully. After the men left, Wade lingered again, a pattern that had become more frequent. I did not want you to feel pressured, he explained. Those events can be overwhelming even for people who enjoy them. But for what it is worth, I think the town would be glad to meet you. You have become something of a legend. Lily raised her eyebrows in question. Henry from the Whitmore ranch has been talking, Wade said with a slight smile. Saying what a fool Thomas was to reject you. It has gotten around. People are curious about the woman who cooks like an angel and does not speak. She wrote, I am not sure I want to be an object of curiosity. Then come as my guest, Wade said, the words coming out in a rush as if he had not planned them. Not as the cook, not as anything other than a woman I am proud to escort to a social event. If anyone bothers you, I will deal with them. If you want to leave early, we will leave early. But I think you might enjoy some of the music at least. Lily stared at him, her heart pounding. Was he asking her to accompany him as a woman might accompany a man she was courting? Or was this simply kindness, an employer looking after an employee? She wrote, Are you certain you want to be seen with me? People may talk. Let them talk, Wade said firmly. I stopped caring what people thought a long time ago. The question is whether you want to go, not whether it is proper or what anyone might say. She thought about it, about the loneliness of her existence, about how long it had been since she had participated in normal social activities. And she thought about spending an evening in Wade's company, away from the ranch and the careful boundaries they maintained here. She wrote, Yes, I would like to go. Wade's face lit up with a smile that made him look years younger. Good. That is good. I will make sure we have the wagon ready. The dance starts at 7, so we should leave around 6 to get there in time. The week leading up to the dance passed in a blur of nervous anticipation. Lily worried about her dress, a simple blue cotton that was respectable but hardly fashionable. She worried about her hair, about how she would communicate with strangers, about whether she would embarrass Wade with her presence. But she also found herself humming soundlessly as she worked, a lightness in her step that had been absent for far too long. Saturday arrived with perfect weather, warm but not too hot, with a gentle breeze that promised a pleasant evening. Lily took extra care with her appearance, pinning her auburn hair in a style she hoped looked elegant, and wearing her mother's cameo brooch at her throat. When she emerged from her room, she found Wade waiting in the kitchen, dressed in clean clothes with his hair still damp from washing. "You look beautiful," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her blush. She wrote, "Thank you. You look very handsome." The ride to town was pleasant, the wagon rolling smoothly over the dirt road. Wade pointed out landmarks, told her stories about the area, and made her laugh silently with his dry observations about some of the local characters they would likely encounter. By the time they arrived in Porterville, Lily felt more relaxed than she had in days. The social hall was already crowded when they entered. Music spilled out into the street, a fiddle and guitar playing a lively tune. Inside, lanterns cast warm light over the assembled townspeople, and the air smelled of perfume, pomade, and the fresh-cut flowers decorating the tables. Heads turned as Wade entered with Lily on his arm. She felt the weight of curious stares, heard the whispers that started up like wind through grass. But Wade kept his hand steady on her arm, guiding her through the crowd with quiet confidence. "Wade!" A jovial voice called out, and a portly man with impressive sideburns approached. "Good to see you, son. And who is this lovely lady, Mayor Preston? May I introduce Miss Lily Porter? She is the cook at my ranch. Miss Porter, this is our mayor, Franklin Preston." The mayor beamed at her. "Delighted, my dear. I have heard wonderful things about your cooking. Half the men in the county are green with envy that Wade found you first." Lily smiled and nodded, unsure how to respond without her slate, which was in her bag. Wade, sensing her discomfort, intervened smoothly. "Miss Porter communicates through writing. She lost her voice to illness but is otherwise in perfect health." "Ah, I see," the mayor said, his expression turning sympathetic. "Well, that is a shame, but I am sure it does not diminish your other qualities. Welcome to Porterville, Miss Porter." Similar interactions followed as Wade introduced her to various townspeople. Most were kind, some were curious, and a few were clearly judgmental, their eyes lingering on her as if she were a fascinating but unfortunate specimen. Through it all, Wade remained steady at her side, his presence a buffer against the less charitable stares. Then she saw Thomas Whitmore. He was standing near the refreshment table, talking to a blonde woman who was laughing at something he said. When his eyes met Lily's, his expression hardened. He said something to his companion and began making his way across the room. "Wade," Thomas said coldly when he reached them. "I see you brought my rejected bride as your guest. Scraping the bottom of the barrel, are we not?" Wade's body tensed beside Lily, but his voice remained calm. "I see you are as charming as ever, Whitmore. Miss Porter is my guest, and I will thank you to speak of her with respect." "Respect?" Thomas laughed harshly. "She is defective goods. I would think you would have higher standards." Before Wade could respond, Lily pulled out her slate and wrote quickly, her hand steady despite her anger. She held it up so both men could read. "I may have lost my voice, but you, sir, have lost your humanity. I count myself fortunate to have escaped marriage to such a small-minded man." Thomas's face flushed red. "How dare you?" "She dares because she is correct," Wade said, his voice dropping to a dangerous level. "Now, you will apologize to the lady and leave us in peace, or we will step outside and settle this another way." A crowd had gathered, sensing drama. The music had stopped, and all eyes were on the confrontation. Thomas looked around, clearly aware that public opinion was not in his favor. Most of the women were looking at him with disapproval, and several of the men were nodding in agreement with Wade. "This is ridiculous," Thomas muttered. "I will not apologize for speaking the truth." "Then you will leave," the mayor said, stepping forward. We do not tolerate such rudeness at our social events, Whitmore. Good evening to you." Thomas glared at all of them but seemed to recognize he was outnumbered. With a final contemptuous look at Lily, he turned and stalked out of the hall. The crowd began to disperse, the music started up again, and Wade turned to Lily with concern in his eyes. "Are you all right?" she nodded, though her hands were shaking slightly as she wrote. "Thank you for defending me." "That was difficult. He is a coward and a bully," Wade said. "You are worth 10 of him, and do not let anyone tell you otherwise." An older woman approached, her face kind beneath her gray hair. "My dear, that was beautifully said. That young man needed to be taken down a peg or two." "I am Martha Collins, and I want you to know you are welcome in this town." Others came forward after that, expressing similar sentiments. By the time the rush of support had ended, Lily felt overwhelmed but deeply touched. Perhaps she had been too quick to judge this community. Perhaps there was room for her here after all. "Would you like to dance?" Wade asked quietly, and she realized the music had shifted to a slower tune, couples moving onto the floor. Lily wrote, "I have not danced in a long time. I may be terrible at it." "Then we will be terrible together," Wade said with a smile, offering his hand. She took it, letting him lead her onto the floor. His hand settled at her waist, warm and steady, and she placed her hand on his shoulder. They moved together awkwardly at first, finding the rhythm, but gradually they synchronized, swaying to the music with increasing confidence. "I meant what I said earlier," Wade murmured, close enough that she could feel his breath against her hair. "You look beautiful tonight. And watching you stand up to Whitmore, I have never admired anyone more." Lily looked up at him, seeing something in his eyes that made her breath catch. It was not just respect or friendship. It was something deeper, something that mirrored what she felt growing in her own heart. When the song ended, they stood still for a moment, neither wanting to break the connection. Then Wade cleared his throat and stepped back, though he kept hold of her hand. "Would you like some punch?" The rest of the evening passed in a pleasant blur. They talked with various townspeople, or rather, Wade talked and Lily wrote occasional responses that he read aloud. They danced twice more, each time feeling more natural in each other's arms. And through it all, Lily felt herself falling deeper into love with this man who saw past her silence to who she truly was. On the ride home, the night air cool and filled with the sound of crickets, Lily felt content in a way she had not experienced in years. Wade was quiet beside her, but it was a comfortable silence, the kind shared between people who did not need to fill every moment with words. "Lily," Wade said, using her first name for the first time, "may I speak plainly with you?" She nodded, her heart beginning to race. "These past weeks, having you at the ranch, I have felt something I thought was dead inside me. Joy, hope, the possibility of a future that includes more than just work and memories. You have brought life back to that place and to me in ways I cannot fully express." He pulled the wagon to a stop, though they were still a mile from the ranch. Turning to face her, he continued, "I know this may be too soon. I know you have reasons to be cautious given what happened with Whitmore, but I need you to know that I see you. Not a disability, not a mail-order bride, not a cook. I see a woman of strength and grace, a woman who communicates more in her silence than most people do with 1,000 words. And I find myself wanting to spend every day learning to understand the language of your heart." Lily felt tears streaming down her face. She fumbled for her slate, her hands shaking, and wrote, "I never thought anyone would want to understand. I thought my silence would always be a wall between me and the world." "It is not a wall," Wade said softly, reaching out to wipe a tear from her cheek. "It is just a different way of speaking, and I am learning to listen." She wrote quickly, "I am falling in love with you. I have been fighting it, thinking it was impossible, that you could never feel the same way about someone like me." Wade took the slate and chalk from her hands, setting them carefully aside. Then he cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle. "Someone like you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You mean someone brave enough to start over in a new place, skilled enough to turn a house into a home, strong enough to face rejection and keep going, beautiful enough to make my heart forget it was supposed to be broken. Lily, I do not just fall in love with you. I am already there. Completely and utterly in love with you." Then he kissed her, and Lily felt her world shift on its axis. The kiss was tender at first, tentative, asking permission. She answered by wrapping her arms around his neck, pulling him closer, pouring into the kiss all the words she could not speak. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Wade rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he whispered. "Not as a mail-order bride, not as a convenience. Marry me because we love each other and because I cannot imagine my life without you in it." Lily pulled back just enough to retrieve her slate. With shaking hands, she wrote, "Yes. Yes, I will marry you." Wade let out a whoop of joy that startled the horses and made Lily laugh silently. He kissed her again, then again, as if he could not quite believe she was real. Finally, with grins on both their faces, he picked up the reins and drove them the rest of the way home. The ranch hands noticed the change between them immediately. Timothy gave Wade a congratulatory slap on the back. Robert smiled knowingly, and Jack simply nodded as if he had predicted this outcome all along. When Wade announced their engagement at breakfast the next morning, the men cheered, and Timothy immediately started planning a celebration. "We will invite everyone from the dance," he declared. "Show them how a real wedding is done." But Wade shook his head. "That is up to Lily. This is her wedding as much as mine." Lily wrote, "Something small, just us in the hands and maybe a few people from town. I do not need anything elaborate. I just need you." "Small it is," Wade agreed, taking her hand and pressing a kiss to her knuckles in front of everyone. The hands hooted and whistled, and Lily blushed but did not pull away. They were married 3 weeks later in the church in Porterville, with the pastor reading the vows while Lily signed her responses, and Wade spoke his with a voice thick with emotion. She wore a new dress, pale yellow like sunshine, that the seamstress in town had made specially for her. Wade wore his best suit, and when he lifted her veil to kiss her as his wife, the small congregation erupted in applause. The celebration afterward at the ranch was exactly what Lily had wanted. Simple, joyful, and full of people who genuinely cared for them. Martha Collins brought a cake. Henry from the Whitmore ranch came and brought a beautiful quilt as a gift, and even the mayor attended with his wife. Thomas Whitmore was notably absent, which was fine with everyone. As the sun set and the guests began to depart, Wade pulled Lily aside to the porch where they could watch the mountains turn purple in the fading light. "Happy?" he asked, his arm around her waist. Lily nodded and wrote on the slate she still carried by habit, "Happier than I ever thought possible. Thank you for listening to my heart." "Always," Wade promised. "For the rest of our lives I will listen to your heart. It speaks louder than any voice ever could." That night, as they lay together in the room that was now theirs, Wade traced patterns on Lily's arm and told her about his dreams for the ranch, for their future. She listened with her head on his chest, feeling the rumble of his voice through his body, and realized that this man had given her something more precious than restored speech. He had given her a voice through his love, a way to be heard that had nothing to do with sound and everything to do with understanding. The years that followed were not without challenges. Running a ranch in California in the late 1870s was hard work, with droughts and harsh winters and the constant struggle to keep the operation profitable. But Wade and Lily faced everything together, communicating through the unique language they had developed. Her written words, his spoken responses, and the thousands of small gestures and glances that conveyed more than sentences ever could. Lily continued to cook for the hands, but as Wade's wife, she also took on other responsibilities. She helped with the business side of the ranch, keeping meticulous records and handling correspondence with buyers. Her education served her well, and Wade relied on her judgment in important decisions. The hands respected her, and new workers quickly learned that Mrs. Wade might not speak, but she missed nothing and commanded authority through her quiet competence. 2 years into their marriage, Lily discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with joy and trepidation, remembering the loss Wade had suffered before. He was protective to the point of being overbearing, trying to prevent Lily from doing any work at all. She had to finally write him a stern note. "I am having a baby, not dying. Please let me live my life." Wade had laughed and relented, though he still insisted on hiring a woman from town to help with the heavier housework. Lily accepted this compromise, knowing his fears came from love. Their son was born in the spring of 1881, a healthy boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes. They named him James, and Wade cried when he held his son for the first time, all the grief he had carried for years finally releasing in the face of this new life. Lily, exhausted but radiant, watched her husband cradle their child and felt a completion she had not known she was missing. James was a quiet baby, which amused the ranch hands to no end. "Like mother, like son," Jack would say with a grin. But as James grew into a toddler, it became clear he had inherited his father's gift for speech. He chattered constantly, and Lily would watch him in wonder, this miracle child who had been given the voice she had lost. One afternoon, when James was nearly 3, he climbed into Lily's lap as she sat on the porch. "Mama," he said, as he did dozens of times a day, "why do not you talk?" Lily glanced at Wade, who had been mending a bridle nearby. This was the question they had known would come eventually. She pulled out her slate and wrote, "I lost my voice when I was sick, but I can hear you and I understand you and I love you very much." James studied the words, though he could not yet read them. "Papa, what does it say?" Wade read the message aloud, and James considered this information seriously. Then he put his small hand on Lily's cheek. "That is okay, Mama. I will talk for both of us." And he did. As James grew older, he became his mother's voice in many ways, reading her written words to those who needed to hear them, explaining things to younger children who did not understand. But he never saw her silence as a deficiency. To James, it was simply part of who his mother was, as natural as his father's height or his own dark hair. When James was 4, Lily became pregnant again. This time, with the experience of one successful birth behind them, both she and Wade were less anxious. Their daughter, Emma, was born in the fall of 1885, a tiny thing with auburn hair and a spirit that announced itself from the first day. Unlike her brother, Emma seemed to understand her mother's silence instinctively. Before she could even talk herself, she would watch Lily's face and hands, responding to gestures and expressions that others might miss. The ranch prospered. Wade's fair treatment of his workers and Lily's management skills created a reputation that attracted the best hands in the county. They expanded their herd, added buildings, and became one of the most successful operations in the area. Thomas Whitmore's ranch, by contrast, struggled with high turnover and poor morale. Occasionally, Lily would see him in town, and each time his expression would be a mix of regret and resentment. She felt nothing for him, not anger or vindication, just a distant pity for a man who had let his own narrow vision blind him to what truly mattered. One day, when Emma was 2 and James was 7, a young woman arrived at the ranch, looking for work. She was shy and spoke with a heavy accent, newly arrived from Germany and struggling with English. Wade hired her to help Lily with the house and the children, and Lily immediately saw something of herself in the girl's uncertain eyes. Greta, as she was called, settled into the household with visible relief. One evening, as Lily was teaching her to make bread, Greta suddenly said, "Mrs. Wade, the men say you cannot speak, but you understand everything, yes?" Lily nodded and wrote, "Yes, I understand. And I understand how it feels to be uncertain in a new place." Greta read the words haltingly, her English improving daily. "You are kind to me. Others in town, they laugh at my words, but you never do." Lily wrote, "Words are only one way to communicate. Kindness speaks all languages." Greta smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "I think you are very wise, Mrs. Wade." Over the years, others came to the ranch who were struggling in various ways. A hand who had lost an arm in an accident and thought he would never work again. A young man who stuttered so badly he could barely speak. A woman fleeing an abusive husband with 2 small children. Wade and Lily took them all in, gave them work or shelter or simply a place to recover their strength. The Triple Bar Tea became known as a place where people were valued for who they were, not what they could do or how closely they fit society's expectations. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Wade gave Lily a gift that made her cry. It was a leather-bound book, empty except for the first page. On that page he had written, "The story of us, as told by my beloved wife, Lily Wade. May these pages hold all the words your voice cannot speak, and may they remind us both that true communication comes from the heart." Lily began to write their story in that book, filling pages with her memories of how they had met, the early days of their courtship, the growth of their family. She wrote about the small moments that had shaped their life together. The first time James had called her Mama, the afternoon Emma had tried to braid her hair, the evening she and Wade had danced alone in the kitchen while the children slept. She wrote about the challenges they had overcome and the dreams they still held. The children loved to look at the book, asking Wade to read their mother's words aloud. It became a family tradition, these reading sessions where Lily's written voice filled the room, and the children learned that their mother's silence was not absence, but simply a different kind of presence. When Emma was 5 and James was 10, a young doctor came to Porterville, fresh from medical school in San Francisco. He heard about Lily's condition and asked if he might examine her, curious about the case from a medical perspective. Wade was protective, but Lily agreed, hoping perhaps some new advancement might restore what she had lost. The doctor was thorough and gentle, examining her throat and asking questions that Wade answered for her. Finally, he sat back and shook his head. "I am sorry, Mrs. Wade. The fever damaged your vocal cords beyond repair. There is nothing I can do to restore your voice." Lily had expected this, had known it in her heart for years, but hearing it stated so definitively still brought a moment of grief. Wade took her hand, and she squeezed his fingers in response. But the doctor continued, "However, I want you to know that you should not consider yourself disabled. The work you do, the family you have raised, the respect you have earned in this community all speak to your capabilities. You have found ways to communicate that are perhaps more meaningful than speech. That is no small accomplishment." After the doctor left, Wade pulled Lily into his arms. "Are you disappointed?" She pulled back and wrote, "No, I have everything I need. I have you. I have our children. I have a life I love. My voice would not make any of that better. You are remarkable, Wade said, kissing her forehead. "Did I ever tell you that when I first saw you that day, riding up to the ranch, I thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen? And then, when I learned about your silence, I felt this strange sense of recognition. Like maybe we were meant to find each other, two people who had been broken in different ways and could heal each other." Lily wrote, "We did heal each other. You taught me that silence is not the same as being voiceless. I taught you that it is possible to love again after loss. Together, we made something neither of us could have made alone." "Indeed we did," Wade agreed, pulling her close again. The years continued to pass, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the growing of children. James developed a talent for working with horses, spending hours in the corrals training even the most difficult animals with patience that reminded Lily of his father. Emma showed an aptitude for numbers and often helped Lily with the ranch accounts, her quick mind spotting patterns and solutions that others missed. When James was 16, a wealthy rancher from Sacramento visited the Triple Bar T, looking to buy breeding stock. He was impressed by the quality of the horses and by James's skill in demonstrating them. At dinner that evening, the man made a surprising offer. "Your boy has real talent," he told Wade. "I could use someone like him at my operation. If you are willing, I would take him on, teach him the business from top to bottom. It would be a good opportunity for him." Wade looked at Lily, then at James. "That is a decision James needs to make for himself." James, nearly grown now but still with some of the boy in his face, looked torn. "I love it here, but I would like to learn more, to see more of the world outside Porterville," Lily wrote. "Then you should go. The ranch will be here when you are ready to come back. Your father and I want you to follow your dreams." It was hard to watch James ride away several weeks later, his belongings packed in a trunk, his face eager and nervous. Lily cried silent tears, and Wade held her as they watched their son disappear down the road. But they both knew it was right. Children were meant to grow and make their own paths. Emma, at 12, stepped into the gap her brother left, taking on more responsibilities and showing a maturity beyond her years. She also began to show an interest in helping people, often visiting sick neighbors with remedies Lily prepared or reading to the elderly woman who lived alone on the adjacent property. "I think I might want to be a nurse," she told her parents one evening, "or maybe a teacher. I want to help people like you and Mama have always done." Wade smiled. "You can be anything you want, sweetheart. Your mother and I will support you." When James returned 2 years later, he was no longer a boy but a man, confident and skilled. He worked alongside his father with a new appreciation for what Wade had built, but he also brought fresh ideas and perspectives from his time away. Father and son became true partners, expanding the ranch in new directions. Emma did become a teacher, attending normal school in Sacramento, and returning to Porterville to open a small school for children whose families could not afford the existing tuition-based education. She taught for free, funded by the ranch and by donations from families who believed in what she was doing. Lily could not have been more proud, watching her daughter give voice to children who might otherwise have been silenced by poverty and circumstance. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the whole community came together for a celebration at the ranch. The barn was decorated with lanterns and flowers, and long tables groaned under the weight of food that people had brought. Martha Collins, now elderly but still sharp, gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. 25 years ago, she said, a young woman came to our town, rejected and alone, and a young man who had closed his heart to love took a chance on seeing past what others saw as a limitation. Together, they built something that has blessed all of us. The Triple Bar T is not just a ranch. It is a place where people are valued, where second chances are given, where love is spoken in more languages than words. Here is to Wade and Lily. May they have 25 more years of happiness. The crowd cheered, and Wade pulled Lily onto the dance floor, just as he had at that first barn dance so many years ago. They moved together with the ease of long practice, and Lily looked up at her husband, seeing the gray in his hair and the lines on his face, and loved him more than she had thought possible to love anyone. Later, when the guests had departed and the children were cleaning up, Wade and Lily walked out to the porch they had shared so many times over the years. The mountains were visible in the distance, eternal and unchanging, and the stars blazed overhead. Wade pulled out a letter from his pocket. "I wrote this for you," he said. "I wanted you to know what these years have meant to me." He began to read, his voice soft in the darkness. The letter spoke of his gratitude for their life together, his admiration for her strength, his love that had only grown deeper with time. He talked about the joy their children brought him, the satisfaction of building something lasting, and the peace he had found in sharing his life with her. When he finished, Lily was crying, and so was he. She wrote on her slate, the chalk glowing faintly in the lamplight from inside, "You gave me a voice when I thought I would never be heard again. You listened to my heart when everyone else heard only silence. You loved me when I was certain I was unlovable. I would live these 25 years again, exactly as they were, if it meant ending up here with you." Wade read the words aloud, his voice breaking. "Lily, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. That day you rode up to this ranch, lost and looking for work, was the day my life truly began. Everything before was just existing. You taught me how to live." They held each other as the night deepened around them, two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed: acceptance, understanding, and a love that transcended the limitations others might have seen. The years that followed were gentler. Wade and James ran the ranch together, with Lily gradually stepping back from the daily management to focus on the things she loved: her garden, her grandchildren as they came, her writing. The book Wade had given her grew to fill several volumes, a chronicle of their life together that the family treasured. Emma married a young doctor who came to Porterville to work with the elderly physician who was ready to retire. They had 3 children, and Emma continued her teaching even as she raised her family. James married a woman he met in Sacramento, a strong-willed rancher's daughter named Catherine, and they had 2 sons who showed every sign of carrying on the family business. Lily loved being a grandmother, delighted in the chaos and noise of children filling the house. She communicated with her grandchildren the same way she had with her own children, and they never thought of her as anything other than Grandma, who wrote her love on slates and in gestures, and in the warm cookies she always seemed to have ready. One evening, when Lily was in her 60s and Wade was approaching 70, they sat together on the porch as they had so many times before. Wade had been quieter than usual that day, and Lily had noticed him watching her with an intensity that was unusual even for him. "I have been thinking," he said finally, "about the day we met. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not come to the Triple Bar Tea, if you had given up after Whitmore rejected you?" Lily wrote. "I would have survived somehow, but I would not have lived. There is a difference." "I think about it sometimes," Wade admitted. "I think about how close I came to missing you. If you had arrived a day earlier or later, if I had been away, if you had chosen a different ranch, all the small chances that had to align perfectly for us to find each other." Lily wrote, "Perhaps it was not chance. Perhaps it was meant to be. I like to think that somehow, some way we would have found each other. Some souls are meant to meet." Wade smiled. "I like that thought. And I want you to know that no matter how many years we have left, Whether it is 2 or 20, they will be the best years of my life because I am spending them with you. She wrote, and mine with you, always. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. From inside the house, they could hear Emma's children laughing, James's voice as he told a story, the sounds of family and life continuing around them. Wade and Lily lived many more years together, watching their grandchildren grow, seeing the ranch continue to prosper under James's capable management, and enjoying the peace that came from a life well lived. They faced the challenges of aging together, supporting each other through illnesses and losses, always communicating in the language they had developed over decades. When Wade passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 79, Lily was beside him, holding his hand. She did not need words to tell him goodbye. Their entire life together had been a conversation, every day a new chapter in a story that had begun the day she rode up to his ranch, voiceless and desperate, and he had said the words that changed everything. "Then I will listen to your heart instead." Lily lived 3 more years after Wade's death, spending her time with her children and grandchildren, finishing the story of their life in the final volume of the books Wade had given her. She wrote about their love, about the lessons they had learned, about the importance of looking past surface limitations to see the true worth of a person. On a spring morning much like the one when James had been born, Lily passed away peacefully in the house that had been her home for more than 40 years. Emma and James were with her, along with several of her grandchildren. Her last act was to write a final message on her slate, tell them I love them all. Tell them that silence is not the same as having nothing to say. Tell them to listen to hearts, not just words. The family buried her next to Wade on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a sky as blue as the one that had welcomed her to California all those years ago. On her headstone, James had carved words his father had written in one of his letters to his mother. "Here lies Lily Wade, who spoke volumes in her silence and taught us all how to truly listen." The ranch continued, passed down through generations, always maintaining the values that Wade and Lily had established: fairness, kindness, and the understanding that every person has worth regardless of their limitations. Emma's school grew into something larger, eventually becoming part of the public education system, but maintaining her vision of education for all. The story of Wade and Lily became local legend, told and retold, inspiring others to look past the obvious and see the potential in every person. Years after both were gone, a young woman came to the Triple Bar Tea, great-great-granddaughter of Wade and Lily, carrying with her the volumes her ancestor had written. She had just lost her hearing in an accident and was struggling to imagine a future where she could still contribute, still be valued, still find love. Her family brought her to the ranch and gave her the books, and she spent days reading the words Lily had written so long ago. When she finished, she understood. Her great-great-grandmother had faced a similar challenge in a time when such things were even less understood and less accommodated. Yet Lily had not just survived but thrived, building a life of meaning and purpose, finding love that transcended her limitation. If Lily could do it then, surely she could do it now. The young woman stayed at the ranch for the summer, learning about the place that had given her ancestor refuge, walking the same paths Lily had walked, standing on the same porch where so many important moments had occurred. And slowly, she began to heal, to imagine a future that included her disability but was not defined by it. Before she left, she visited the graves on the hill. Standing before the headstones, she signed her thanks, her hands moving in the language Lily never had the chance to learn but would have understood instantly. Then she returned to her life, carrying with her the lessons of a woman she had never met, but who had left her a priceless inheritance. The knowledge that true communication comes not from the mouth but from the heart, and that love, real love, will always find a way to understand. The sun set over the triple bar tea that evening, as it had for more than a century, casting long shadows across the land that Wade and Lily had built together. The mountains stood eternal in the distance. The cattle grazed peacefully in the pastures, and somewhere in the house, a new generation was gathering for dinner, continuing the legacy of family, acceptance, and love that had begun so long ago with a rejected bride and a rancher who had known how to truly listen.